Well, things did not go as hoped or as planned for Michigan football against Michigan State, 37-33, in a weird game in which Michigan looked like it was in control for about 3 quarters, and then things fell apart. We are going to break it down with the now beardless Mackey Award-winning tight end, Jake Butt. He's growing his beard out for the wins. It didn't continue. He's now clean shaven like a baby, but we are going to go ahead and talk about this game. Jake, let's just jump right into it, man. If you were to take a moment to say, like, I opened up the podcast on Locked on Wolverines yesterday, basically the first 10 minutes were me saying what was wrong. I'm going to go ahead and kind of essentially ask the same of you. When you look at what went wrong in this game, what is your diagnosis?
The biggest thing that I want to see is, and I tweeted this out in game, football is a game of momentum. Okay. In every there's no neutral momentum. Either, at any play, someone's either gaining or losing momentum. And early in the game, we're up 7-0, and we're going down to score to take a commanding 14-point lead on the road. And I know everyone in the stands was shitting their pants. I know Michigan State was scared. And ultimately, I think that it was showing what we knew. We're a better team than them. And we get down there and say what you want about the holding call. I didn't think it was a holding, but it was. It was called. We get behind the sticks, get into a 3rd and 8 situation. And, you look at it, this is your chance where you have to take a commanding lead. If you kick a field goal here, Michigan State actually wins. Yes, we got points on the board, but Michigan State wins the momentum battle. So Cornelius Johnson runs a little rub route and he's running out, and Cade's rolling out to the right. And it's a completed pass. Now, Cornelius had enough separation that I think if the ball's on his upfield shoulder, he can catch, duck, and the chains get moved. So that's where you see football as a game of inches, where no two completions are the same. Yes, it was completed, but it was on his back hip. He had to fall and fell up short. Was putting in Jake Moody. Put it on his upfield shoulder, just a foot away, 6 to 12 inches away, and you may have a first down. But it was the story of this game where there was so many times throughout the game where we needed to throw and connect on a haymaker. And you can't mess around in big games, but you definitely can't mess around in your rivalry games. And if you're on the road, it's even that much more important that you take a commanding lead. And we just didn't. We just did it. We'll get into it more, but red zone offense continues to be a problem. There's in college football, that isn't a problem for most teams. It's high flying offense. You should have schemes that are, of course we want to run the ball and that's who we are. But just because that's who you are doesn't mean that that's going to put your players in the best situation when the time comes. There was a play there about 5 minutes left in the second quarter. Or no, this is earlier in the second quarter. And it's 3rd and 3, 3rd and manageable. So we're getting a 3rd and manageable situation. Michigan State did this in all their critical situations. They were playing press man to our trips out to the left. We had one-on-one coverage across the board. Okay. We had 5 O-linemen in the box and 1 tight end. To Michigan, that's 6 blockers. Michigan State had 7 guys in the box and a safety with his eyes in the backfield. He wasn't worried about the receivers out back. So right there, you're outnumbered. You have 7, arguably 8 Michigan State defenders focused on our running back for 6 blockers. The O-line actually got a lot of movement on the play, but it doesn't matter. You're outnumbered. So that's a situation where we're not putting ourselves in the best situation to succeed. And 3 points versus 4 points is literally the difference in this game. And it happened throughout the game. And it's one thing to say we need to score more points in the red zone. But what's the answer? We got to, we're looking at it as, analysts, as fans, but, within the walls of, Schembechler Hall, something needs to be addressed. We have too much talent. And man, did we outplay them. We were the better team. It was clear as day. But you got to start wondering and finding solutions. It's not enough to just say we need to score in the red zone. You now have to figure out how to do that. And I think that's been, our biggest struggle. And if we want to go on, the season's not over yet, guys. The season's not over. Let me say that. You can win out And if you beat Ohio State, I don't think a lot of you are going to remember this game. If we go out there and beat Ohio State, there'll be a lot of sins that are forgiven. But if we don't clean up some of these problems, we don't have a chance either.
Yeah, and it's there certainly were a lot of things that it just felt like it was on the coaches. I thought the players, Caden McNamara came out after the game and said that he puts the loss on him. I certainly don't do that. I thought he played about as good of a game as he possibly could. Interception at the end of the game aside, I mean, Michigan shouldn't even have been in that position. I put a lot of it on the coaches. There were a lot of different things, and Jim Harbaugh says that Cade McNamara was in the medical tent for when JJ came out for the second time. To me, it was a risky proposition, even just having him in that late in the game, just for the sake of you've got to try to get your guy who's thrown the way that he had thrown all game. I know there are some people out there, I'm still seeing a lot of comments saying like Cade McNamara was terrible, blah, 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 which is absurd. I mean, I know it's a vocal minority, but it's one of those things where, like I said on the podcast yesterday, Tom Brady misses, right? Tom Brady doesn't always put the ball exactly where it's supposed to go. Tom Brady will be wide on different plays. Every quarterback misses. Not every quarterback has pinpoint accuracy all the time. Cade certainly put the team in a position where it could win between him, Eric All, who had a monster game, and then Andrell Anthony, who had not only had his first catch, had his first 6 catches, 155 yards. You talked about the idea, I believe it was, I don't even remember if it was the pre-show, if it was the actual show, about having a guy that can go up and get those one-on-one balls here, get to when you have that man coverage. Andrell Anthony seemed to be providing that, at least in the first half. And then Michigan kind of goes away from him. They start to try to get Cornelius involved late. They're doing things that weren't necessarily the things that were working early in the game. Was it because Michigan State was taking it away? Was it Michigan's coaches deciding, hey, we're just so smart, we're gonna start getting other guys involved here in the late stages? What do you think?
I don't think Michigan State did anything to make us necessarily uncomfortable. I think flat out is we beat ourselves. And, Andrell Anthony, it's not like he was being schemed open in the first half. It's not like he was wide open. What he was doing was making plays. For him on that long touchdown, that's a 10, 12-yard catch that he turned into a touchdown. That Moss that he had in the end zone that JJ threw to him. He wasn't open. He just made a play when we can go back and revisit those, what I said about third down, and it happened continually. Late in the game, it was the same coverage on 4th and 3 with the game on the line. It was press man with everybody's eyes in the backfield. So you need a guy to go make a play. Who's that guy? Who's that guy? It does seem Andrell Anthony. Where did he just all of a sudden take a massive leap this season? I haven't heard his name until this point. Eric All had a great game. Can we get him more involved in the pass game though? Can he run some of these corner routes? Can he run some routes on these mid-level third downs that aren't just chip and shallows or flat routes? Can we get a little bit more creative ways to get these guys the ball? I don't think Michigan State, I think we had them scared, and the stats show that. I mean, over 500 yards of total offense, dominated time of possession, but it's not good enough. It's not good enough. If you have all that, but you're kicking, 3, 4, 5 field goals a game, it's not good enough. That's double-digit points being left on the board. And a guy like Cade, now, he almost played a perfect game, okay? And we talked about it, either a couple shows ago about the collective position of a quarterback. I love, this is what you get with Cade, is Cade goes into that room when everybody's hurting and everybody's looking for somebody to blame. And Cade says, put it on me. That's what the great leaders do. They deflect praise and they absorb criticism. And that's what Cade did, is he said, put it on me. Now, there's a couple times in the game where there's room to even grow. Okay. Early I think it was in the first half, Michigan State jumps offside. Cade's rolling out. As soon as that flag gets thrown on offsides, you don't throw the ball away. You don't take a sack. You throw it up in the air. You try to give your guy a chance, but it doesn't matter. It's offside. It's a free play. Aaron Rodgers does this all the time. He's one of the best at it. We didn't even none of our receivers touched the ball. Okay. That's a free shot that who knows, So that's where Cade can say, all right, Wonderful game. This loss was not at all on Cade. But I think he also knows there's a couple instances in this game where he could be better. And that's what you love about Cade is he's going to correct that himself. But in terms of the Michigan State defense, they didn't make us uncomfortable. They didn't make us uncomfortable at all. We beat ourselves. And frankly, we have to clean that up. We have to figure that out. And, we'll touch on the defensive side of the ball, Isaiah. What we've talked about all season, Nebraska, there was a play there where, our defense will play a great game, 95%. And then it's a handful of plays that you make the big mistake. We saw it against Nebraska. We saw it against Northwestern, huge chunk plays that led to touchdowns. So you're looking at that 4th and 1 where they ran a pop pass to their receiver and we tackled him short of the goal line and ultimately led to a touchdown. Here's the truth about a defense is football is a team sport, but in order to play team defense, you need all 11 guys on the same page. Almost selfish is I'm going to do my job and I'm going to trust the other 10 guys to do their job. Okay. So we're sitting there 4th and 1. It's man coverage and it's Michigan State. You have to expect the unexpected when you're playing Michigan State. That's man coverage right there. So you know what that says is I'm going to have my eyes on my receiver from snap to whistle, and I'm going to trust the other 10 guys will make the tackle. Well, we got greedy. We tried to, we left our man in coverage and tried to help make a tackle on what ultimately was a play action pass. That's an easy pitch and catch. We didn't make it hard on them in that situation. There's a couple times where our linebackers are filling holes, but they're filling the same hole that a defensive lineman's already occupied. And with a back like Kenneth Walker, who he creates when there is nothing there already. If you give him a crease, you're going to pay the price. You're going to pay the price. He had an unbelievable game, but we didn't help ourselves. You have to be disciplined. And it's only more imperative in these big games against better opponents and better competition. You have to be disciplined. All 11 guys have to know very clearly their assignment and trust that the teammates that you're taking the field with will also do their assignment. It hurts, man, because I've been in that locker room. I've been part of some tough losses, and I get it that Michigan fans don't ever get complacent. That's not what we're saying. This one hurts, but those dudes played their asses off. Every single player that took the field left it all on the field. And they ultimately played good enough to win, but we're not measured. We don't live in a world of what could have been or what should have been. You're measured on, did you win or didn't you? And we didn't. And I hurt for the players.
Yeah, we talked after the game how it almost feels like it seems like this Michigan team has been cursed. I hearken all the way back to the week that Bo Schembechler died. That's kind of when the perception started changing of Michigan football. It went from number 1 versus number 2, and number 2 loses by 3 points on the road, and it just everything seemed downhill from there, right? And it still seems like things are kind of in that same boat. You weren't used to Michigan losing games like this to Michigan State. Yeah, it would happen every now and again. It would happen in the Spartan Bob, TJ Duckett situation, but generally that wasn't the case. But with that in mind, I mentioned the officiating. It's one of those things where people like to have the moral high ground in a certain sense and say, don't blame the officiating. And I agree to an extent, but officiating is part of the game. And it played a giant part in this game. I'm not saying it's the sole reason why Michigan lost the game. It is not. Michigan made a way too many mistakes, way too many. I'm too smart for, I'm type thing with the coaches, but the officiating certainly played a part. You mentioned the holding that maybe wasn't on Andrell Anthony. It was negligible. I think the issue for me when you look at this game is it seems like Michigan State gets away with a ton. Michigan got away with nothing, right? There was, I call things pretty evenly when I'm on the field. And if I see Michigan hold, that's why I say, for instance, Nebraska, there were a lot of times in the Nebraska game, not only were the calls going for Michigan, there were times that they just weren't calling things that were obviously things like holding and things like that that they should have been called. Granted, Aiden Hutchinson was held on every play too, but it's like the Wisconsin game. Vincent Gray's mugging a receiver all the way downfield. Obvious pass interference doesn't get called. I'm one of the first people that will say, hey, that was pass interference. Michigan got away with one. Michigan State got away with a lot here because it wasn't just, not calling Aiden Hutchinson holds. He obviously got a couple calls this time, but it was just a mixture of things. A touchdown by Kenneth Walker that, in my eyes, wasn't a touchdown. I understand if they don't have conclusive evidence, but with that in mind, you go around to the other side and they say they have conclusive evidence of Peyton Thorne's knee being down on the Aiden Hutchinson touchdown. I only finally rewatched the video. They didn't re-show the video in Spartan Stadium because anytime it seemed like it was going to go against Michigan State, they didn't show the pre-plays. But so I just finally watched it yesterday. To me, I don't see how you overturn that. And I'd gotten texts from you. I got texts from my best friends saying that they had heard, that Joel Klatt was apoplectic about it. Mike Pereira was apoplectic about it. So you have those types of things that were going on. You have the pass interference that wasn't called on Cornelius Johnson on the 4th and 3 and the penultimate drive for Michigan. There's a degree to which I can say, all right, it's fine if you want to swallow your flags to some degree for the sake of like, let the boys play. But I mean, this just was so tilted towards one side. Jim Harbaugh said to me last week, I had asked him the question about Aiden Hutchinson and how he gets held all the time. And he said, you just hope to get a fair game. Mm-hmm. I didn't feel like it was a fair game in that regard. I'm not taking anything away from Michigan State. And I had people comment on that saying like, but you are. No, I'm not. Michigan State took advantage of those things, right? I think if all things being equal, Michigan was the better team. The stats bear that out. But Michigan made crucial mistakes. Michigan State didn't. Michigan State capitalized on their good fortune in the officiating. But how do you see what happened in the officiating? What's your take on it after kind of letting things digest a little bit?
Watching it sucks. And to tie that even back in with, are we cursed? Because it seems in the biggest games, these things have haunted us. These kind of calls get, and it's not just in a random situation too. They're critical plays. And in football, moments matter, plays matter. It's all momentum. So, to have that touchdown get called back, you cannot convince me that there was conclusive evidence to overturn that. And you just wonder, how does that happen? Okay, maybe the holding call on Andrew Anthony, maybe bang bang play, maybe the Kenneth Walker letting loose of the ball, maybe, but that shows inconsistency. If there's inconclusive evidence on Kenneth Walker, but there's conclusive evidence to overturn on the Aiden Hutchinson touchdown, that's it's not consistent. And you would at least hope, if not for fairness, is consistency. But there hasn't been consistency. There hasn't been fairness. And I told myself, when I'm watching the game, like, one day we will get lopsided officiating in our favor. But until then, can we just get a fair game, an equally played game? Now, I can say all that, Isaiah, but I can also say this. I don't think it's useful to depend on or complain about things that are out of your control. And officiating is out of our hands. Okay. We as fans and as observers can call it all we want, but it's out of your control and you have to find a way to win. And there was, as you said, man, we're beating a dead horse here. There was plenty of opportunities to win in that game. And the game should not have even been close aside from the officiating. So our mindset as a team has to be, it's us against the world, man. No one's coming to save us. No one's coming to rescue us. Balls aren't going to bounce our way. Calls aren't going to be called in our favor. It's just, that's until it's proven otherwise, that's the state of the Michigan program. We have to create our own luck. Okay. And Maybe a couple instances in the game we did that, but not enough. Not enough to win the game. Those 50-50 balls when it's in our control, the fade on the 2-point conversion. That's a 50-50 ball that we have control over. You got to find a way, maybe, right? Got to find a way. Some of these, we're down in the red zone. We're getting great field position. You got to create your own luck. You got to find a way to score. The fake punt. It was there. It was there. We got to block one of those guys. I think it was Seltzer. We have to block one of those guys. You got to get a piece of one of those dudes, and then you move the chains on 4th down. You got to create your own luck. It's not going to come from outside sources. You got to create your own luck, especially in these tight games. And it hurts to see that it was a little bit here, a little bit here, a little bit here that ultimately led to a loss that it still stings today.
Yeah, and that's kind of my point when I say sometimes these guys are too smart, and I'm talking about the coaches. Now Harbaugh said that was not an intended fake punt, that he bobbled the ball. But nonetheless, I mean, here's one of the things though, when you're Michigan, I feel like so often we've seen over the course of the last decade plus that there is that the other team, not as talented, wants it more. And that's like when you say you need to block that guy, you need to be able to do something. There always seems to be and it might not be, it's not all 11 guys on the field, but it's just the maximum effort isn't always there. And with the talent that Michigan has, there is no reason, regardless of how good Michigan State is this year or not good, what doesn't really matter. Michigan has more talent. It needs to play beyond the level of, it needs to play up to the level of talent. If you just do that, then you're essentially fine. But you find an issue with where the coaches are too smart for their own good. Sometimes they're trying to do certain things, like the play that bothers me most in the entire game, the 3rd and 3, right before that 4th and 3 that we talk about, where Michigan is throwing the ball downfield. You need 3 yards and you're going for a touchdown with 2 minutes left. Like, considering what the defense had, that it was incapable seemingly of stopping Kenneth Walker up until that point. To me, why are you going for it all? You just need 3 yards and you got 2 plays to get it. I understand you want to try to put the game away, but the problem is you're not actually putting the game away. You're giving Michigan State a chance to put the game away. And it's just, to me, all of those decisions are compound decisions, right? You have to keep in mind, hey, look at the clock. We need to try to just get the first down, draw some of that clock down, and get to this point where we can score a touchdown and they have 0 time to come back and do anything about it. But that's part of the idea of sometimes these coaches are too smart for their own good. They're trying to draw up something without recognizing the fact that, hey, situational awareness, number 1, number 2, we have the better offensive line against their defensive front. We should just be able to just, their offensive line motto is smash. We should just be able to smash. If we can't get 3 yards on 3rd down, we should be able to get 3 yards between 3rd and 4th down just by using what we have at our disposal. Because if you really are this good football team, you don't need to outthink everybody every time. You just need to outplay them. And it just seems so often that Michigan is not outplaying people in that light. Now, Michigan certainly outplayed Michigan State in the overall body of work, but the issue is you got 33 points. You should have had 45, and if you weren't going to have 45 out of those 5 touchdowns that you allowed Kenneth Walker to have, you got to turn some of those into field goals, which they weren't. So with that in mind, defensively, like you said, it was a lack of discipline. We saw that time and time again with the late substitutions that really cost them. I understand Mike McDonald is relatively new to being a defensive coordinator, but like, again, situational awareness. It feels like these coaches have none of it at times. And anytime that they give you something that looks really good, like Wisconsin, you get something like this that doesn't look very good. And it seems like there's just boneheaded mistakes across the board. And it's incredible to me, considering, hey, they did an incredible job of stalling Peyton Thorne and his receivers. They did a really good job in special teams. They let them do nothing on special teams. It's one of the top return units in the country, is the top return unit in the country on punt. Did nothing in that regard. Yet it's these little things that cost you. I've been saying for the last 48 hours, it's a perfect confluence of events. If you take one thing away out of these myriad issues, Michigan wins the game. One. But yet, kind of like Michigan Notre Dame in 2011, Michigan had no business winning that game. Perfect confluence of events. One thing goes different, they lose. In this case, one thing goes different and they win. Mm-hmm. So what's your take when you look at the grand body of it, especially the coaching decisions? Mm-hmm. What's your take on it? Because I know it's hard to be tough on the coaches sometimes when you're a former player, but to me, it was more on them than it was on the players.
I think you just touched on something that I really want to speak about and consider. And, I was thinking about this. Does narrative dictate outcome, or does outcome dictate narrative? Okay. You remember when the Kansas City Chiefs win the Super Bowl? Every one of those playoff games, they started off horribly. They were down like 24-0 to the Texans quick. But their narrative was so solidified. Everyone on that team was on the same page. They knew what to expect from Andy Reid. They knew what to expect from their offensive defensive coordinator. And the plan didn't change. There was a narrative set that it doesn't matter what happens, we're going to find a way to win. And they did. And that continues to solidify itself throughout all the playoffs. And ultimately, they win the Super Bowl. What you just said is the process throughout the season and throughout the years is starting to set a narrative. And we now have this narrative that you wonder if it has influence over the outcome. Is when we don't pull away, when it's 30-14 at one point, and we're sitting there as fans and as players, just one more score, man, we need to put it away, and we don't. Does a mindset flip like, shit, man, we're letting them hang around, where it should maybe stay as, it doesn't matter, we're going to beat these guys' ass no matter what? Situationally, are you confident enough to say that we're going to win no matter what? Because in our biggest moments, we've fallen short for whatever reason. Is it an execution thing? Is it a play call thing? Is it a substitution or communicative thing? Or maybe it's just a little bit of each adding up to, now the narrative is can Michigan win the big game? And, for better or for worse, the fact of the matter is we didn't win last weekend. We haven't been great against top ranked teams on the road. And in regards to that, okay, for Michigan fans out there, very few programs are. Okay, we should hold ourselves to the standard of the best because we're Michigan, we have the resources to be. But you're talking about a handful of teams that are able to do this on a year in, year out basis, is to be the elite of the elite. We haven't proven ourselves there yet. Yes, that's the bar, but we haven't met that. So, when you're talking about this, Isaiah, those little things add up. If this is the standard all the way up top, and we're consistently staying a few levels down, how do you make that leap? Most of your big work's done already by recruiting, by beating the lesser teams, but you start to need to look at the little things that continue to fall short across all three phases, from coaching, from execution, from communication. It's a little bit here, a little bit there. That's how you close the gap. And right now we have a little here, a little there, but it's going against us. Okay. So if you want to be considered elite, if you want to hold yourself to that standard on a year in, year out basis, you have to execute on the little things in the big games, not the little games, in the Michigan States, in the Penn States, in the Ohio States, in the bowl games. That's when you prove your worth, not against Northern Illinois, not against, a struggling Northwestern team. It's not against Rutgers. It's in these big games that matter. So I don't know the answer. I don't know the answer, but it's imperative that we find it out, and we find it out fast to salvage this season and win out.
And that's the thing, is winning out is possible, but you have to find that out now. And it starts against Indiana and just regrouping. Indiana likely still probably on their third string quarterback, I would imagine. I haven't seen anything yet to tell me whether or not Penix is a go. Granted, I haven't really looked, but you got to regroup, get that taste of winning back in your mouth before you go to Happy Valley. And if you can win in Happy Valley, and I think Michigan will, I've not been impressed with Penn State outside of anything past that Auburn game. And even a little bit, before that, really the Auburn game was the only game by Penn State that I was really, truly impressed by.
Yep.
But that's a winnable game.
Yeah.
You can get that and then get Maryland the next week, which you should. Maryland has no defense. They consider it to be optional.
Yep.
So you get that. You give yourself a shot. Ohio State, again, now that it played a defense worth its salt, looked mortal again.
Yes.
So I know there's a lot of work to be done on the Michigan defensive side, considering what we just saw this last week. But you that's where I take a positive out of this game. That's my big positive, is the offense showed you outside of the red zone. Well, if you can find a way to fix that a bit, heck, just get one more touchdown.
Yeah.
One, and everything's different. Against Ohio State, you're not going to be able to kick field goals. I'm sorry. Jake Moody, you might as well just say, aside from extra points, obviously, you need him for points after, but to some degree, you just need to be like, Jake, you are not going to kick a single field goal attempt that isn't after a touchdown. That is not going to happen, because you can't have that against Ohio State unless it's in a game-winning situation because the game is tied or you're down by 1 or 2, something like that. So to me, that's a winnable game, more so because you saw what you needed to see on one end, and that was that the passing game, if the running game isn't working, the passing game can truly take things over. I understand this was not a good Michigan State pass defense, but just about no one thought that Cade McNamara was going to go and throw for 383 yards, team with over 400 yards passing. When I'd have to look to see when the last time the teams had over 400 yards passing. It's not been recent. So that gives me a little bit of hope for the offense. The defense, I don't know, because we saw this against Nebraska. Now, we saw the Evan Hull play. It was just one play really last a week and a half ago. And then you see several with Kenneth Walker. It's going to be a different scenario on that final week when Michigan takes on a team that has a Travion Henderson and a team that has, honestly, the best wide receiving core in the country. So am I off base? Do you think that there's reasons to be at least not optimistic in the sense of, the game's, just go ahead and consider it a win? Of course, that's not the case, but do you feel a little bit hopeful in some regard coming out of this game for that or anything else?
Yes. Michigan State they're not playing any patty cake games down the schedule. They can lose one. They might lose 2. So we can go and just learn from this game. Okay. Be better from a substitution standpoint, be better in the red zone, be better and more disciplined on defense. Okay. And we have the talent. We really do. We can play with anybody in the country. We could go to the Big Ten championship, beat Ohio State and win. Okay. But we got to clean up these things. Now, Michigan fans, it is okay to hold your team to a standard. It is fine being frustrated about the loss. Okay. But if you're going to root for the team, these are your coaches. These are your players. Cade is your quarterback. If you can't pick sides. All right. You can't pick sides. If you're a fan of Michigan football, then you support these guys. You support them because you're part of the environment. You're part of recruiting. You're part of a collective image that the University of Michigan has. All right. Turn on that film and go watch the game and find me one player that wasn't willing to die to win that game. They played their asses off. All right. We can be frustrated about the loss, but do not bail on these guys. And if you do, we don't want you. Do not bail on this coaching staff. There's plenty of time for them to write this. There's plenty of opportunity. We beat Ohio State. We went out. Think you guys are going to be, eating some of your words. All right. So let's be part of the solution, not the problem, and support our players and support our coaches and support this athletic program. All right. We have everything in place to be successful. Yes, we fell short last week, but the season isn't over. All right. I'm going to bleed maize and blue till the day I die. It doesn't matter who takes the field. This is my team and I'm going to support them. I invite you to join me. I invite you to join Isaiah and I. In that sense, we love this team. All right, let's be part of the solution, not the problem.
And it reminds me very much of, I believe it was, I can't remember if it was Mike Morris or Taylor Upshaw that said before the season that we know that as soon as we lose one game, that the fans are going to be against us. So if you're going to consider yourself a fan, you should not be a part of that. I've blocked many a person on the YouTube channel, on my Instagram, because I have a no tolerance policy when it comes to bad mouthing players. Some of that extends to coaches, depending on, basically just be respectful. That's all I'm asking. Be respectful. If you have criticism, bring it up the way that Jake and I are bringing up our criticism. And I know people want it to go harder, right? Mm-hmm. We're not hot take artists. That's not what we're here for. Hot take artists are the ones who go hard in the paint when it comes to that. And they come up with ad hominems and insults and things of that nature. You can be critical without being disrespectful.
Yes.
So certainly the coaches see it, the players see it. It affects the psyche. They'll sit there and tell you all day long, we only care about what's in this building. But listen, they're only human, just like anyone else. So be frustrated, be critical. I'm not saying to just, neither of us are saying be rah regardless. Like, we certainly have our strong, harsh criticisms for this team. And they go harsher than what we're purveying here on tape. But just understand that you are part of the solution or the problem to some degree. And I mean, it's really the team, but they see it. It affects the morale. It affects everything. So just be mindful. That's what we're saying. And as far as that's concerned. So any last thoughts, Jake, before we cut this one and hope for the best for the future?
That's pretty much the thoughts, man. I just, like you said, man, if you're frustrated, don't just want to light the whole city on fire. Like, let's be solution oriented. Let's try to, and the solution isn't to chop off everybody's damn head. Okay. Let's be a part of the solution, man. If you have questions about the game, reach out to me on Twitter. We'll be solution oriented, a little bit less emotional. We use logic, more logic, less emotion. We'll be a part of the solution together, and we'll get this thing steered in the right direction. All right. We're never going to lose faith. We're never going to lose hope. Okay. That's not what we do at the University of Michigan.
And that's very well said. So with that in mind, we will be done with the Moreau's episode. Hopefully this is the only one of the season. We'll see, but that's up to a lot of different factors. Indiana's up next with a night game. I am mad about it, but it is what it is. Jake, if you're going to be there, bring a lot of coats because it's going to be literally freezing. Literally. But such is football sometimes. So for the Mackey Award-winning tight end, Jake Butt, I am Isaiah Hole, Wolverines Wire. We will talk to you on the Locked On Wolverines podcast on Friday together. And again, next week's X's and O's.